The Conti SportAttack 5 is the latest achievement from Continental. We have already reported on it, and the presentation is already online. Today, we have a completely different program. We want to know how the tire performs on the racetrack under extreme conditions with a monstrous amount of torque. The answers are coming now. The Conti SportAttack 5 is, as we already know, a true all-rounder. It is primarily designed for the road, but it is also aimed at racetrack use, and we have already been able to test that in the past. Today, we are here at the beautiful Pannoniaring under extreme conditions. The asphalt temperature showed 50 degrees, and the KTM Super Duke has 140 Newton meters of torque available. That should make any tire sweat. Not only us, but also the tire really had to work hard today. But first, let us briefly look back again at how the tire has developed in its evolution. The predecessor, the SportAttack 4, did not have several things that we now find here. This is a radial tire, and it has its own steel belt, which has different development intensities around the circumference. That means the stiffness decreases towards the shoulder of the tire, and this allows the tire to generate a larger contact patch. This is also supported by a changed tread pattern. Especially in the side area on the shoulder, there are hardly any interruptions anymore. That creates a very homogeneous rubber surface and further optimizes and stabilizes the handling in that area. In addition, it has received a different compound, a different rubber mixture. Unlike some competitors, Continental manages with just one single compound. We know many other tires that use different rubber compounds across the radius of the tire in order to optimize each area individually. Continental is at the point where they say, our compound can be used in all areas. And I have to say, that works really well, both on the road and on the racetrack. Keyword racetrack, that is exactly why we are here. Now it is about how the tire performs. We first went out without tire warmers. It is always said that you can use it without preheating. I have to say, under these conditions, that is hardly a problem anyway. When the asphalt already starts glowing by itself, you only need one lap, and the tires already have really good temperature. What stood out in a particularly positive and pleasant way is that the tire offers a lot of grip right from the start. It does not have a release agent on the surface, unlike what some other tire manufacturers still use. That means you can accelerate quite confidently from the very first corner. Instinctively, you are still a little bit careful, but I was not unpleasantly surprised. I really was able to generate a lot of drive right from the beginning. In terms of tire pressure, we started with 2.5 bar at the front, and this time also 2.5 bar at the rear. Last time, we used it with standard tire pressures. That means 2.5 bar at the front and 2.9 bar at the rear. But this time, because of the extreme temperatures, I reduced the rear pressure a little bit as a precaution. I also wanted to know how the tire would behave. What was remarkable, however, was how much the tire pressure increased. Of course, these conditions made that even more extreme. The rear tire sometimes gained up to 0.5 to 0.7 bar. That means we eventually ended up at around 3.2 to 3.3 bar on the rear tire. And that is really remarkable. You should keep that in mind. However, it has to be said that the Conti can cope incredibly well with high tire pressures. I have already ridden it with 3.5 bar at the rear, and it still worked very well, while other tires would have given up long before that. That means lowering the pressure a lot does not really bring that much with the Conti, that much in advance. So, how did it perform? In the morning, at slightly cooler temperatures, if you can even call it cool, we already had close to 30 degrees air temperature and certainly around 35 to 40 degrees asphalt temperature. And the tire performed very well. On this bike, especially when it comes to the Super Duke, I like to reduce the rider aids very strongly or even switch them off completely so that you really have a lot of drive available. The Super Duke is very heavily restricted, and of course it has to be if you want to put 140 Newton meters onto the asphalt without being thrown off the back. Up to third gear, some power is reduced, and I naturally wanted to prevent that so that we could really see how well the rear tire can dig into the asphalt and generate drive. And that worked really well. But in the afternoon, in blazing heat, I also did a long stint without interruption. When I came back, these were my first impressions. Yes, guys, I have just come back into the pit lane after a long session. I deliberately rode the full session without stopping in order to really push the tire to its load limit. As I said, we now have nearly 50 degrees asphalt temperature, and if we just look at the wear pattern of the tire, it cleans itself completely. From the shoulder all the way inwards, it is completely clean. And that already shows that it can cope quite well with the temperatures and also with the high torque of the KTM. The only thing you notice is that, especially after 5 or 6 fast laps, in maximum lean angle, it starts to become a little bit soft and squishy, but it is still controllable. Of course, it is not easy to send almost 140 Newton meters of torque from the KTM to the rear wheel. For that, I need to pick the motorcycle up a little bit. Then it works immediately again. You can feel that the load transfer then works well onto the rear tire and it pushes massively forward. The front tire looks similar. There, we also have a slightly soft, squishy behavior, especially at corner entry. When you go over bumps, you notice that it starts to move a little bit. But still, we must not forget that we were able to ride extremely fast lap times here, and doing that with a road legal tire is already remarkable. You can see that this road legal tire can really be pushed to the limit on the racetrack and still perform well. The surface also looks really good afterwards. Nothing starts tearing open in the hot areas, and especially at maximum lean angle, it begins to feel a little bit doughy and slightly greasy. But you have to say that this is still on a world-class level if you consider that this is really a road tire. Of course, in this category, a slick will perform a little bit better again because it is built exactly for that purpose. But you can transfer an incredible amount of power and torque with this tire. That was also a very positive effect of this tire in combination with this motorcycle. And it was also one of the reasons why we chose the Super Duke. The Super Duke is not super stable like a super sport bike. It has a certain life of its own, especially at higher speeds, and that makes it a great protagonist when it comes to judging the stability and feedback of a tire. And it showed that when it gets really hot, the tire has a lot of stability and feedback in its basic setup, but in the hot zones, it becomes a little bit more compliant and a bit soft. But you should not exaggerate that too much because we were really riding fast here and the whole thing was performing on a very high level. What we can definitely say in conclusion is that today was an extreme test for both rider and material. With the Super Duke, we have a motorcycle like almost no other, which puts extreme stress on the tires with its enormous torque. And that makes this test really meaningful. The bike does not shine with extreme stability, which is why it is also a great test subject for experiencing stability and feedback very clearly. And in that respect, the tire proved to be very consistent and supportive. Yes, I have to say I had an incredible amount of fun riding this motorcycle. You may have seen that in the riding footage as well. In combination with the Conti, it was really enjoyable. It really does not let you down. And afterwards, you can ride home on the road again with the number plate on the back with a clear conscience. And I think that shows the extremely wide range that tires like this now cover. It gives the normal track day user a perfect starting point to go to the racetrack from time to time without having to think too much about tires or changing them. That makes the whole subject of racetracks and track days incredibly accessible. So, I am at the end. Thank you for staying with us. I hope you had just as much fun as I did. However, I am now very happy that I can slowly get out of my leathers. The sun is still burning quite nicely on my back, and the sweat is running down. So I will say goodbye now, and I trust that soon you will be sweating with this combination yourselves. Until next time, and goodbye.